Hi, my name's Tony. I am the inventor of the Affinity Infusion process. I want to talk about what the inspiration was behind uh, the infusion process. Go back in history a little bit. I grew up in the specialty coffee industry. My dad was a coffee roaster and opened some coffee shops in the 90s. And we were talking about what was the equivalent in tea of for specialty coffee, what was the corresponding equivalent in tea? All I'd ever known growing up was Lipton, bag tea. My grandparents were from the South, so I used to drink sweet tea growing up, boil it on the stove, put a little bit of baking soda in it, dilute it, sugar, lots of sugar, and that's really what I knew of tea. As I got into specialty coffee, I saw that there was a whole different level that you could go to for coffee. And I also saw that emerging trend with microbrew beer and, boutique wines here in California. And the big question was, what is the equivalent in the tea industry or in tea? Um, we kind of loosely nicknamed these four beverages of human celebration. They all go back over 1,000 years, and each one of them is used in human celebration, getting together. You might, have tea with your mom in the afternoon. You might have a beer, in the evening. You're watching the game, glass of wine with dinner, and coffee was always a morning thing. You wake up, the smell of bacon on the stove, of breakfast getting ready, being made, and then the smell of coffee. So, those things are more than each one of those beverages is more than just a a beverage. It's synonymous with growing up. It's synonymous with celebration and heartbreak and all the ups and downs of life. So it's even more important if you want to relive all those experiences, you can do that because your taste is connected to your memory. So um, the objective is to have the best quality product that you possibly can, or the best experience flavor wise, and marry that with the best um, memories, and then those things can be recalled at any time just by re-brewing that particular beverage. So um, that's what kind of inspired, knowing how it was connected to emotion, and how if you're going to be recalling these memories throughout your life, the higher the quality of the product, the more you're going to want to recall that, the more you're going to want to experience it. So I started the quest to find out, what was that corresponding specialty tea product, and I was led to a man named Mike Spillane in San Francisco. Called This company's called the G.S. Haley Company, and they've been in business 150 years, maybe a little longer now. But Mike was everybody I talked to in coffee and in just everywhere. When I called up and asked, who do you talk to about tea, everyone led me to this man, Mike Spillane in South San Francisco. So I called Mike up, and he graciously agreed to see me, and I drove to South San Francisco. Uh, Walked into driving through this little neighborhood in South San Francisco. It was a residential neighborhood, and I was like, I thought I was in the wrong area. But as I kind of, looked side to side, I could see there was this house that had, kind of been transformed into a little plantation style. And I don't mean that from like tobacco or, the South in the 1800s type plantation, but like a house you'd see um, on the islands today, something with white shutters and, looked like it could be, on a tea plantation today. And I walked into this little house, and immediately the first thing that blew my mind was the way that the place smelled, or the fragrance was just, for one, it was something I'd never experienced before. It was nothing like coffee. It was nothing like beer. It was nothing like, when I say beer, I mean the brewing, the process when beer is being brewed. It has a certain aroma, um, and it just immediately calmed. It was a calming effect. It was a soothing effect. It immediately transported me to a different place. And that place didn't have a visual yet, but it was definitely, I was no longer, I was experiencing something brand new. So Mike came out, and he was a very uh, gracious man, wonderful person. Um, I think I had an hour scheduled that day, and he ended up spending 3 or 4 hours with me, going through just a wall. You walk into this white room, and there's a wall of canisters, of metal canisters on the wall, and in each one of those is a tea from somewhere in the world, and not just a country, but an individual garden within that country. And I learned, about Sri Lanka and China that day, and we tasted tea for 4 hours, and I was just blown away by the experience. And I thought, well, this is the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. All I have to do is bring this experience to the customer and to the consumer, to you, everyone out there. And, this will be the easiest success I've ever had in business. And it seemed so elementary to me at that day. And so much so that I ended up spending $3,800 for 6 or 7 chests of tea. The most expensive tea I bought that day was $54 a pound, the Darjeeling from the Himalayas in India, up over 5,000 feet elevation. And it blew my mind. So I had to buy it, even though it was, so expensive. I knew I'd never probably make a profit on it. I knew by delivering that to people, it would pique their interest in tea. And we couldn't really afford it at that time, but I went ahead and, put it on a credit card, and, not really doing the math that 10 chests of tea, which at that time, a chest was around 60 or 70 pounds of tea, maybe up to, I believe it would go up to 100 pounds at some point. But, when you figure that a pound of tea yields 450 cups, like 8-ounce cups of tea, that's like hundreds of thousands and millions, a million cups of tea, just a lot of tea. And I didn't really do the math about, how many I'd have to sell to do that. So I went, got a truck, went over to the warehouse, picked up my 10 chests of tea, took them home, and we had, a little coffee shop at the time here in suburb of Sacramento, California. And we were roasting coffee, brewing beer, doing some innovative things that we called the beverage cafe here. And I thought, this is a no-brainer. Went out and got my jars to display the tea, went out and got a bunch of infuser balls and tea bag, the refillable tea bags, that type of thing. And thought, wow, this is going to be just, I can't believe someone hasn't done this before. And, that was just me being so naive that I soon understood what the problem was, because I've come in to the cafe, and all of the jars with the tea, is beautiful, amazing tea that I had, would be put underneath the counter, and my little sign explaining, what the tea was and who would be down. And I was just baffled by why the employees or people that, I'd hired were working in the cafe. Most of them very young, why they didn't want to sell this amazing product, which I'd introduced to them. And I soon found out, finally, I just went to one of them and I said, do you hate me? Is there a problem? Do you not like, you not like the tea? What is the big challenge with selling this amazing product? I'd done training for them. I'd shown them how to make the tea, everything. And they did, finally, one of them, kind of just spoke up and said they didn't want to tell me, really, but they said, we can never make the same cup of tea twice. Even if we make a great cup of tea, every time the customer comes in, they bring a friend and they'll say, please make me that tea you made me the other day. And and panic sets in for them, they said, because they didn't know how they made that tea. And they followed the instructions that I had left for them, but they could never somehow make the same cup of tea twice. And even though that's, there's some variation in products that you're handcrafting, there was way too much variation apparently to where it wasn't where the customers were complaining. So it took me aback, but I sat down and I said, oh, thank you very much for being honest. And then it started to dawn on me, this is why people have not done this to this point. And then I kind of like started really looking at the process of brewing tea, but not from a perspective of all the tradition and just because you've been drinking tea all your life, just because tea's been around 5,000 years, doesn't mean that everyone knows how to make tea. And just because it's so familiar to everyone doesn't mean it's not a very complex scientific experiment to brew tea. And at that moment, and then I started to do a little more research into why or the history of tea, and I found that the tea bag, the number one delivery mechanism for tea throughout the entire world, was an accident. A tea broker in 1908 in New York sent out his tea samples, meant to be loose leaf, meant to be full leaf, meant to be not consumed in a bag, but not to be brewed in a bag, but to be taken out of the bag and dumped into a pot or another brewing method. And he was so cheap. His name was Sullivan. He was so cheap that the paper, you could see through it. And so his customers just put the tea, the entire bag in the water and started brewing it like that. And then they called him up and said, hey, this is amazing. How did you come up with this? This is the greatest invention. He had no idea what they were talking about. And so what that did then it created a whole process of where they tried to re-engineer how to manufacture a bag, how to get all these beautiful large tea leaves into a bag evenly with the same amount in each bag. Was a very impossible task to do profitably. So they ended up, in order to make a business out of the tea bag, they ended up grinding the tea. At first they ground high quality tea leaves, and then they just said, well, we're grinding these tea leaves anyway down to small particles, so they would run through packaging machines to get into the bags. That, why don't we just buy lower quality tea that's already in that form, that's already a smaller particle size, and then it'll run through the machines and it costs less. Well, that led to the last 100 years or 120 years where the quality of tea has gone down and down and down because the delivery method requires a lower quality of tea. Now, in recent years, the pyramid tea bag has come along. It's trying to reverse this trend. But anyway, back to the finding that this was an accident. And now that's a huge light bulb moment when you go, the number one delivery method for this wonderful product is an accident, and was an accident. At that moment, I knew it couldn't be the best way. And I then started looking at the process brewing tea from a perspective of a seventh grade science class. And I said, for any science class, this would be a difficult experiment to replicate. And when I looked at it, saw that the variables associated with brewing were all non-controlled. So in the current method for brewing tea, all the variables, you take the water temperature, you take the length of time in contact with the water, you take so the temperature is dropping, you've got to know when to take it out of contact with the water. You got atmospheric pressure. There's whether you agitate your tea leaf or not, whether you shake the tea bag, or whether you pour the water in so it circulates the water through the tea bag. All of those things would have to be done exactly the same every single time in order for you to produce the same product every single time. And that's what my employees were telling me, that they could not control the variables. In their own way, they were saying we couldn't control the variables associated with this brewing process, and therefore we cannot deliver the same product twice. So, we kind of look for excuses not to be put in that awkward position. So that's what started the whole process of looking at the variables associated with brewing. And it was not a simple task, but a simple mission from there, because it was simply to control the variables associated. And if you could control those variables or give the operator control over them, then you would enable them with the ability to reproduce the process and deliver the same cup day after day. And that's really what we've achieved, is we've built a machine that allows you to control all the variables associated with brewing and deliver the same cup time and time again. And I want everyone to experience what I experienced that day in Mike Spilling's business at his tea broker's office. I want everyone to experience that. And that's why we've built a machine that is not a locked environment. And when I say locked environment, what I mean is you can use your own tea we're going to deliver teas to you on a subscription basis, but there's nothing that locks you from putting your own tea or tea you find anywhere into the machine and use it to brew your own amazing experience from tea you find as you travel, as you go throughout your own travels and your own journey on the exploration for the exploration of different types of teas. So I welcome you, and I want to thank everyone that's been a supporter so far, the VIPs and everybody family, friends, everybody who has been a part of this long journey. And now it's the most exciting part, because now we get to introduce it to everyone. And what I'm hoping for is that the process of brewing tea is no longer the main focus, that the tea and the romance and what I call vacation in a cup, that becomes the main focus of tea, not the way the English do it at what time of day, or let's meditate while we're waiting for our tea to infuse. I hope that the conversation becomes about Sri Lanka and about Darjeeling and about the amazing people and the amazing countries that are tea producing countries. And I hope all of you embark on a journey inspired. We'll try to inspire you by sending teas throughout the year, that you can learn the origin of the tea, and you can go and potentially visit the garden, and hopefully along with that experience, you'll then pass it on to someone else. And I just want to make one more final note here before I wrap up, and that is, this in no way, I was surprised by the backlash we got from traditional tea people, and traditional tea, people who are already into tea, thinking that this is in some way meant to replace or displace traditional methods of brewing tea. And it's the opposite for me. I hope that this inspires people to learn about the history of tea. I hope this inspires people to start, to learn how to infuse tea, properly, the traditions of tea, all of that. And the example I like to use from coffee is that, I like a French press coffee. Um, I don't always have the time to do a French press cup of coffee. So does that mean I'm not going to drink coffee? No, I will have a drip coffee. And so I hope that this fills a space in the tea lexicon, and I hope it allows people to experience better tea more often. So thank you, and I look forward to meeting some of you, to doing educational classes, that type of thing, and also hearing about your journey. And I hope to create a platform where you can all share your experiences. If you're interested in reading more, those patents really explain the technology behind the affinity infusion process. So our patent numbers are available. If anybody's interested, you can go read the patents, and that's probably the best technical explanation of actually what is happening and the innovation we've actually delivered. So thank you, and I look forward to being on this journey with you all. Goodbye.